Refer to the graph at right to answer the following questions. So the first question we're being asked to answer is to find y when x equals 6. So let's see what that might look like. So when x equals 6, remember here's our x-axis and here's our y-axis. So when x equals 6, we're going to come over here, 6 in the x direction. We're saying, well, what y goes along with that? So from here, we're going to go see where that hits the graph. And we can see that that's going to touch the graph right there. So what y value is that going to be? Well, I'm going to follow this over, and it looks like the y value is going to be -1. So y equals -1 when x equals 6. Now they're asking us to find x when y equals 6. So now they've changed things around on me. Now I want to look on my y-axis for where we see y equals 6. And so that happens right here. I say, well, where is that going to hit the graph? Now remember, we're talking about the y value here. So we want to follow this over. We don't want to go straight down to the graph. We want to go over here and say, where does that hit the line? Okay, so there it hits. And so when we come down to find the x that corresponds to that, we can see that the x is going to be -8. So x equals -8 when my y value is 6. Now they're going to have us do something similar. We're going to find y when x equals 0. We always have to be a little bit careful with those zeros because they tend to get us twisted around a little bit. So when x equals 0, that means that I'm not going anywhere in the x direction. So I go 0 in the x direction. What's the y going to be that goes with that? Well, I'm going to go straight up to find where that hits the y. So I can see that that hits it right there, and that's at y equals 2. Now for the next one, find x when y equals 0. Again, it's a little bit tricky because we're starting here at the origin again. But what I want to keep in mind is, what am I trying to find? I'm trying to find the value for x. So that means that I'm going to be traveling in the x direction. I'm going to be traveling along the horizontal. My y value is 0, so y value being 0 means I don't move up and I don't move down. I'm just going to go along the axis to see where does that hit the line, and it hits it right there at x equals 4. So be real careful with those ones where they have the 0 values. Just take those nice and slow. Don't just start ripping into the problem. Think about what it means to say that x equals 0, what it means to say that y equals 0. So we've answered the first 4 questions fairly easily. Let's see what the next one is. Find the slope of the line. So to find the slope, we can use any 2 points that we want on the line. And we've just found lots of points as we were going along. I'm going to go ahead and use these 2 points here. I've got a point there and I've got a point there that I'm going to use. I'm going to say, how do I move from one point to another? And we want to be thinking about our rise and our run. So if I start here at this point and I say, how do I get to this point here? Well, I can see that I go down. How many do I go down? I go down 2. So remember, the slope is the idea of the rise over run. We want to keep going back to that concept of rise over run. So the rise we just saw from that first point to the second point is -2. And then when I say, well, how far do I run? And I count that over, I can see that I go over 4. So does that mean that my slope is -2 over 4? Not quite, because we want to be sure that we simplify our slope. So we can simplify it, first of all, by taking care of the sign. We can see that we have a negative divided by a positive, right? This one we went 4, we were going +4, we were going to the right. So negative divided by positive is going to give me a negative, and 2 over the 4, if we simplify that out, will give us 1/2. So my slope is -1/2. Now we've almost got everything that we need to find the equation of the line. And in fact, we do. We just want to pay attention to what we have. Find the equation of the line. Well, we've become very fond of this y equals mx plus b. In order to come up with the y equals mx plus b form of the equation, we need the slope and we need the y-intercept. And we could say, well, wait a minute, we have the slope. Here's the slope right here. So let's go ahead and put that slope in for the m value. So for m, we're going to put in -1/2. Now notice we also need a b value. The b value, remember, that's our y-intercept, 0b. So if we take a look at our graph, we could say, wait a minute, we actually talked about that y-intercept. Remember up here in part C, we had finding y when x was 0. Well, this is basically telling us that if x is 0, y is 2, there is our y-intercept. And so that 2 is going to be our b value. It's a +2, so we can go ahead and leave that plus sign there. Now I just fill in the rest of the equation. Y equals -1/2 was my value for m. I want to be sure that the x goes into place. We found +2 for our value for b. And so that gives us the equation of this line. So if we just dissect the line a little bit, even though we're not given an equation, we can pretty quickly come up with what the equation of that line should be.